Soft darkness. A single candle trembles. Imagine a soul built for light, ready to cradle every burden, to soothe every fracture in another's heart. This is the empath's gift, an endless reservoir of compassion, a warm flame in the world's cold expanse. But what if the world never returns the favor? What if betrayal whispers its poison into that flame? Picture rain tracing the edge of a window pane, every droplet a promise of relief, until it stalls, until it remains perched, suspended, heavy with expectation. So it is with the empath who gives and gives, believing trust will never break, willing to carry countless silent sorrows. Then comes the moment of fracture, a friend's call unanswered, a secret turned against them, kindness met with indifference. In that space between a heartbeat and a breath, something within shifts. The empath senses a fracture deep in their own core, as though the mirror of compassion has shattered. What happens when one designed to heal finally reaches the limit of endurance? When the warmth they offered is swallowed by darkness. Here begins our journey into the hidden chambers of the mind where empathy and shadow collide. For within every compassionate heart lies a shadow, an untamed well of anger, resentment, and desire for justice. Left unacknowledged, it waits patiently. And when the empath's flame flickers under betrayal's wind, that shadow can surge forth, more formidable than any calculated predator. This is the story of a transformation, from gentle caretaker to awakened force. A cautionary tale and a call to truth. Because sometimes the most dangerous kind of power emerges when the kindest soul finally decides to fight back. An empath is more than a healer. It is someone whose very sinews hum with the emotions of others, whose joy and sorrow become their own. When you speak, they hear your unspoken heartbeat. When you weep, they feel the sting of every tear. Their gift is resonance, a living bridge between souls. Yet resonance carries a hidden cost. For every light they absorb, a shadow accompanies it. Carl Jung called this shadow the repository of our unacknowledged darkness. Our anger, resentment, and the fierce demand for justice we dare not admit. In Ion, he wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he confessed that confronting the shadow is like facing an inner adversary we cannot escape. Consider a mirror. In perfect clarity, it reflects the world, untouched, immaculate. But crack that glass, and darkness floods its fractures. So it is with the empath's heart. Compassion is the light. The shadow oozes through every fissure, unseen until pressure builds. What does this shadow look like? Imagine the face in the corner of a room, its eyes dark with silent fury. Picture that figure pressing its palms against a glass wall, straining to emerge. Light and dark, entangled in a perpetual dance. Now, when an empath's kindness meets exploitation, when their trust is repaid with cruelty, that shadow doesn't merely simmer, it weaponizes. It crafts a form of power born not from calculated malice, but from righteous indignation twisted by pain. This is no ordinary wrath. It is a psychological thriller writ into flesh and bone, a force that knows your deepest vulnerabilities because it lives within you. In this crucible of compassion and darkness, we begin to see a new archetype, the dangerous empath, one who wields empathy like a blade, cutting through pretense, exposing deceit, and exacting retribution with chilling precision. And so, having illuminated our twin pillars, resonant empathy and the lurking shadow, we're poised to witness the empath's descent, the alchemy by which light becomes dark and kindness forges its deadliest weapon. In the quiet corridors of care, even the most steadfast heart can begin to crack. First, there's Dr. Lena, a therapist whose days blur into one another. She greets each client with compassion that borders on self-sacrifice. Yet as she absorbs story after story of suffering, her own sense of self begins to erode. Emails from colleagues go unanswered. her phone rings unanswered. At night, her dreams replay fragments of her patient's trauma. Compassion fatigue seeps in like poison, until one morning Dr. Lena wakes to find herself staring blankly at an empty notebook, her empathy drained, replaced by a hollow ache that no kindness can fill. Next, meet Aaron, the social activist whose zeal once galvanized thousands. He organized protests, penned impassioned essays, and lent his voice to every silenced margin. But when the media turned its lens on him, twisting his motives into caricature, the betrayal hit like a blow to the chest. Accusations of hypocrisy and hidden agendas swirled until his every act of solidarity was branded as self-interest. The young idealist who once believed in collective redemption now feels only contempt for institutions, for bystanders, even for himself. His outrage, once constructive, curdles into bitterness. Each new headline fans the embers of resentment into a blaze. Finally, there is Maya, a devoted caregiver whose loyalty bound her to a lifelong friend. When that friend repaid her trust with deception, leaking personal confidences, weaponizing shared secrets, the wound cut deeper than any stranger's betrayal. In that moment, Maya's heartbreak crystallized into a single, burning question: why? In the crucible of betrayal, her sorrow mutated into icy resolve. Never again would she be the helpless victim. The same empathy that once drew her to others now fuels a cold determination to reclaim agency. Across these three lives, a pattern emerges. The empath's relentless giving collides with betrayal, and compassion fatigue fractures identity. Psychological research labels this phenomenon well. When an emotional reservoir runs dry, the psyche fractures, and the shadow rushes in to fill the void. With every act of selfless giving met by indifference or exploitation, the empath's inner boundary erodes until there is nothing left between their light and their darkest impulses. At the end of this descent, what remains is not mere anger, but a shadow-driven fury. It is precise, relentless, and unbound by the usual moral constraints. An empath turned avenger understands every wound, every vulnerability, and wields that understanding like a surgeon's scalpel. This is the moment of irrevocable transformation, where compassion finally gives way to contempt and the gentle heart becomes a weapon sharpened by betrayal. Only by witnessing this descent can we grasp the full magnitude of the danger when an empath's shadow is unleashed. Across time and myth, we find the dangerous empath in many guises. Rebels who dared to carry humanity's fire, only to ignite the world's fury. Consider Prometheus, the titan who stole flame from the gods and gifted it to humankind. His act was born of compassion, a creator's empathy for mortal suffering. Yet Zeus's wrath was swift and unyielding. Shackled to a crag, Prometheus endured an eternal torment, his shadow becoming both punishment and symbol of forbidden knowledge. In his gift lay a spark of danger. In his suffering, a testament to the price of compassion untempered by caution. Centuries later, another empath rose, Joan of Arc. A peasant girl guided by inner visions, she felt France's anguish as if it were her own blood. Driven by an almost violent empathy, she led armies into battle, her conviction shattering entrenched hierarchies. But that very force of will, fueled by divine resonance, proved as fearsome as any military tactician. Condemned as a heretic, Joan's shadow emerged in the flames of her martyrdom, her legacy oscillating between sainthood and sedition. These figures embody what Jung would call the wounded healer and the avenging angel. The wounded healer turns wounds into gifts, binding their pain to the world's suffering. The avenging angel wields outrage as a blade, cutting through complacency with ruthless precision. Both archetypes share a paradox. Empathy's light grants insight, but also stokes the fire of retribution. A Jungian scholar reminds us that the empath's shadow is not a deviation, but a mirror, reflecting the hidden anger that justice demands. When Prometheus recognized the spark's power, when Joan's visions transcended piety, they each crossed the threshold where empathy fused with shadow. Their compassion became a weapon, whether to enlighten or to exact vengeance. History offers darker proponents, too. Consider revolutionary leaders whose empathic anger at injustice spiraled into terror. Their initial cries for liberation echoed genuine compassion, but unacknowledged resentment morphed into campaigns of brutality. These cautionary tales show us that empathy untethered from integration yields destructive zeal. Today's empath stands at this same juncture. Like Prometheus, they grasp at the light of truth. Like Joan, they believe themselves anointed to enact change. Yet their greatest peril lies in a shadow that thrives on betrayal, transforming compassion into a ruthless force. By tracing these archetypes, we reveal a lineage, visionaries whose empathy ignited revolutions, only to be consumed by their own fire. The dangerous empath is neither hero nor villain, but a fusion of both. Understanding their mythic predecessors arms us with the insight to recognize the shadow's promise and its peril in our own age of uncertainty. In the silent chambers of the mind, empathy lights up neural pathways designed to connect us. Mirror neurons fire as we witness another's pain, but for the empath, this reflection becomes a living echo, replayed, amplified, and stored. Imagine an animated brain scan. Regions of the amygdala, our primal alarm system, glow bright red with every sorrow the empath absorbs. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, our seat of reason, strains under mounting stress, its circuitry rewiring under chronic overload. Researchers call this empathic distress fatigue, a state where the neural burden of others' emotions hijacks the empath's own regulation systems, leaving them perpetually on edge. But there's more at work than mere burnout. Carl Jung described projection as the psyche's defense. We cast disowned traits onto others to avoid facing them ourselves. For the empath, projection becomes a double-edged sword. They see in others the betrayal and cruelty they refuse to acknowledge in themselves. In a lab, psychologists demonstrate this with a simple test. Participants view ambiguous facial expressions while their brain activity is recorded. Empaths not only mislabel neutral faces as hostile more often, they exhibit heightened connectivity between their mirror neuron networks and fear centers, a physiological hallmark of shadow projection. Next comes dissociation, a psychic reflex to unbearable emotions. The empath's identity fractures. One persona remains endlessly giving, the other retreats into a reservoir of suppressed rage. Over time, these parts collide. The shadow self, long relegated to the subconscious, surges forth when triggered, unleashing behaviors inconceivable to the once gentle soul. We see these dynamics in expert interviews. A neuropsychologist explains how repeated empathic flooding can lead to empathic weaponization, where the empath, now fluent in emotional intelligence, strategically wields vulnerability like leverage. A behavioral specialist recounts cases of fed-up empaths who orchestrate public exposes, mercilessly dismantling targets by exploiting their deepest insecurities, what the specialist terms ruthless truth-bombing. Consider the whistleblower who leaks incriminating files not out of altruism, but as payback for being silenced, or the online vigilante whose articulate critiques become viral call-outs, devastating reputations with surgical precision. These aren't random acts of cruelty. They are shadow-fueled campaigns, methodical and informed by intimate understanding. In these moments, the empath's shadow doesn't merely erupt, it commands. It harnesses projection to cast others as villains, dissociation to bypass moral restraint, and mirror neuron mastery to manipulate audiences. The result is a psychological thriller unfolding in reality. An empath turned strategist, crafting retribution not from blind fury, but from calculated empathic insight. By dissecting these neural and emotional mechanisms, we grasp why a fed-up empath doesn't simply snap. Instead, They evolve into an agent of shadow-driven power, precise, charismatic, and unbound by the usual limits of empathy. And in understanding these processes, we edge closer to recognizing, and perhaps mitigating, the profound danger when compassion and the unconscious collide. In the digital age, compassion finds new battlegrounds, and the empath's shadow finds new weapons. Consider the archivist, a whistleblower who once toiled anonymously within government data centers. Driven by empathy for marginalized communities, they leaked classified documents exposing state surveillance. At first, their act seemed heroic, a triumph of conscience over secrecy. But as the revelations spread, an undercurrent of vengeance emerged. Personal communications were decontextualized, reputations dismantled, and allies turned against one another. The archivist's ruthless precision, knowing exactly which file to drop and when, spoke not only of moral outrage, but of intimate understanding of the system's weaknesses. Their empathy for the oppressed had transformed into a surgical strike against every bureaucrat who'd turn a blind eye. Next, meet the firebrand known only as Nova. On social platforms, they amassed followers by amplifying every cry for justice. But beneath the banner of solidarity lay a relentless intolerance for dissent. Dissenting voices, friends, former collaborators were exposed and vilified. Every retweet of an opposing opinion became evidence of betrayal. Algorithms, hungry for engagement, magnified Nova's wrath, feeding a feedback loop of outrage. Followers cheered each digital execution, blind to how shadow-fueled fervor devours nuance. The empathy that once rallied people to noble causes now fuels an ever-escalating cancel culture, turning compassion into a collective bloodlust. Then there are the prophets of hidden truths, the conspiracy theorists who, sensing society's wounds, offer narratives that bond the disillusioned. They speak with the cadenced authority of someone who's felt the pain of broken promises. Their impassioned denunciations of the system resonate because they mirror listeners' own frustrations. Yet when evidence contradicts their worldview, they double down, branding skeptics as enemies, orchestrating social retribution in comment threads and private channels. Their empathy for the anxious becomes a tool for shepherding followers into echo chambers where shadow-driven paranoia festers unchecked. What unites these modern avatars is the alchemy of digital empathy, mirror neuron resonance amplified by code. Every leaked document titillates the mind. Every viral post ignites the heart. Every conspiracy theory validates unspoken fears. As viewers latch on, they unwittingly become instruments of the empath's shadow mandate, sharing, liking, and pledging allegiance to a cause that brooks no opposition. Philosophers warn that righteous indignation can slip into collective madness. When does the cry for accountability morph into a mob's demand for blood? When empathy's voice merges with the shadow's decree, the line vanishes. Social platforms, designed to reward extreme engagement, become echo chambers where the empath's fury reverberates and escalates. Each notification confirms the empath's potency, fueling further acts of digital wrath. And yet, society clamors for such figures. We Leoneize the whistleblower, exalt the viral activist, and indulge the conspiracy prophet. We mistake their shadow-fueled intensity for authenticity, unaware that what feels like moral clarity may be a precise manipulation of our deepest insecurities. In this modern mirror, the dangerous empath is both hero and architect of chaos. Their empathy reveals hidden truths, dismantles injustices, and unites the disaffected. But their shadow rends the fabric of dialogue, erases the space for doubt, and weaponizes compassion into a platform-driven crusade. As we witness these case studies unfold, a question hangs in the air. Are we empowering the empath's shadow by feeding on outrage? Or can we reclaim empathy as a force for balanced understanding rather than digital vengeance? To answer it, we must confront how technology and our own unresolved shadows amplify the empath's darkest impulses. Only then can we discern whether the modern empath is a catalyst for genuine transformation or the harbinger of an empathy-driven abyss. In the hushed aftermath of turmoil, a new light begins to filter through cracks of despair. Timid, yet insistent. The shadow, Jung once wrote, is the seed of creativity and vitality, but also of destruction if left unchecked. For the empath who has danced with darkness, integration isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. Imagine a solitary desk by a rain-streaked window. A journal lies open, pages filled with raw confessions, moments of rage, the sting of betrayal, the trembling edge of revenge. Across the table, a single, steady hand turns the page. This is active imagination, dialogue with the shadow. By naming the fury, the empath brings it into conscious view, diffusing its covert power. Now shift to a circle of chairs, warm lamplight pooling on worn wood. Faces lean in, voices soft yet resolute. Here, in therapeutic spaces, empathy finds a new home, one of mutual witness, not endless absorption. Boundary setting becomes an act of love, self-love and love for others, ensuring that compassion flows without drowning the giver. In dreams, too, the shadow speaks. Through dream work, empaths learn to walk alongside their darker selves, acknowledging the specter of resentment, the echo of unfulfilled demands for justice. A psychologist's voice reminds us, conscious integration of a shadow reduces projection and transforms destructive impulses into creative energy. Yet cautionary tales linger. We recall a once brilliant activist whose refusal to face inner demons led to public disgrace. Burnt out, isolated, consumed by the same fury they'd unleashed. And the caregiver turned avenger, whose refusal to integrate birthed an unending cycle of retaliation, leaving them hollow and alone. But integration offers an alternate ending. When light and dark unite, empathy becomes tempered steel, strong enough to challenge injustice, gentle enough to heal wounds. The empath who masters both becomes a transformational leader, courageous in the face of cruelty, compassionate even toward their own shadow. Our final turn brings us back to the candle, now steady in daylight. Its flame no longer flickers in fear. It burns with quiet confidence. The empath stands at a threshold, shadow at their side, not as an adversary, but as ally. This is the path forward, not the eradication of darkness, but its embrace. For the most dangerous empath is the one who remains blind to their shadow. The most powerful empath is the one who dares to know it. And so, we leave you with Jung's words, echoing into daylight. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. I used to believe my empathy was a gift, a bridge to understand every sorrow, every fear. For years, I carried others' trauma as if it were my own. Night after night, I replayed their pain in my mind, convinced that by holding it, I could heal it. But over time, the weight became unbearable. It started with small betrayals. A colleague leaked confidential notes I trusted them with. I felt exposed, naked before a world I thought I knew. Then came someone I loved, calling my compassion weakness, using my kindness to manipulate me in front of friends. Each hurt etched itself deeper, a silent ledger of debts owed. I reached a breaking point when I realized I was tired of bleeding for others. I craved power over someone else's vulnerability, the same one I'd surrendered for so long. So I plotted. I gathered every secret, every misstep, every hidden shame. I waited until the moment was perfect, and then I struck. A carefully crafted message sent to everyone they knew, laying bare their private failures and petty cruelties. The rush was immediate. A surge of cold clarity replaced the familiar ache. I watched reputations unravel, relationships fracture, and felt something I'd never felt before: control. In that moment, I understood the shadow within me wasn't an intruder. It was the culmination of every unresolved grievance I'd absorbed. Psychologist voiceover. This is a classic enactment of the shadow archetype, where unprocessed anger seeks expression through strategic retaliation. I don't regret it. Not entirely, because in that act, I reclaimed a piece of myself I thought was lost. But I also tasted a darkness that refuses to stay buried. Now, I stand at crossroads, continue wielding this power, or learn to integrate the shadow without letting it consume me. By the end of E's confession, we feel the chilling potency of empathy weaponized, a first-person account of how compassion, once fractured, can become the sharpest instrument of retribution. Dawn stretches its pale fingers across silent streets, each corner holding the promise of renewal and the weight of untold shadows. Ink swirls in water, dispersing into shapes that vanish as quickly as they form. Hands, once clenched in fury, now open and release. In every act of kindness lies the seed of fury. If you deny it, it will deny you. Those are E's words, echoing through the quiet. They remind us, empathy is no innocent gift. Left unexamined, its hidden depths can become our gravest peril. Now, lift your gaze to the bustling world beyond. Crowded plazas where voices rise in protest, social feeds ablaze with judgment, political rallies where fervor blurs into fanaticism. Each scene mirrors our collective psyche, our capacity for compassion entangled with resentment, hope shadowed by rage. We stand at a crossroads. Our greatest gift, empathy, can heal or destroy. If we ignore the darkness within, it will erupt in ways we neither foresee nor control. But if we dare to face it, to name our unspoken anger and let it speak its truth, we unlock a power unlike any other, the power to transform ourselves and our world with authentic understanding. Carl Jung's final counsel flickers into view as the candle's flame darkens. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So let us walk forward, shadow and light entwined. Let us embrace the full spectrum of our humanity. For the most dangerous empath is the one who remains blind to their own shadow. The greatest hope lies in the empath who dares to know it, and in doing so, dares to lead us all toward a more conscious, compassionate future. Fade to black.